and welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Wednesday, February 6th. China urges calm over North Korea's nuclear threat. A baby boy killed after being run over by a government van. And whistleblower Zhu Ruifeng hits back at online slander. China is walking a very fine line as North Korea threatens more nuclear tests. The Chinese regime is North Korea's biggest ally and trading partner. In a press conference today, the Foreign Ministry says it hopes all countries can act rationally.
China's Foreign Ministry told the involved countries to cool their rockets after North Korea threatened further nuclearization. China is North Korea's biggest ally and reluctantly agreed to UN sanctions against the rogue state. China hopes to maintain stability on its border and prevent the breakout of war.
China is extremely concerned by the way things are going. We oppose any behavior which may exacerbate the situation and any acts which are not beneficial towards the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We call on all the relevant sides to remain calm and exercise restraint, and earnestly work hard to maintain peace and stability in the Korean Peninsula.
North Korea's threat comes after what it calls hostile sanctions against it. North Korea successfully launched a long-range rocket in December in violation of UN resolutions. The UN Security Council increased sanctions against the rogue state to punish it for developing its nuclear arsenal. North Korea says that it has the sovereign right to launch rockets for peaceful purposes. It says the December rocket was to put a satellite into space for peaceful purposes. However, it has also made threats of developing nuclear weapons capable of targeting the United States. Yesterday, China's Foreign Minister Yang Jiechi discussed with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry how to stop a third nuclear test. Many believe North Korea will make true on its promise, but the timing is not known. February 16th is the anniversary of the late leader Kim Jong-il's birth. If past big events can predict the future, the test may be targeted for this date.
China's leaders were busy over the weekend visiting rural areas around the country. State media say the trip showed that central authorities are working to make life better for the country's poor and disadvantaged. But a similar trip made by incoming Premier Li Keqiang did not leave the kind of impression Chinese leaders had hoped for.
It was supposed to be a photo op. Late last year, China's Vice Premier Li Keqiang visited the tiny rural village of Enshi in Hubei province to listen to the grievances of locals. So, why a month later did more than 20 petitioners from that village show up in Beijing, begging Li to never visit again? Chinese state media have tried to portray China's new leaders as leaders who care. On February 3rd, party chief Xi Jinping visited a tiny village with gifts of noodles, oil, meat, and candy. That same day, Li Keqiang traveled to the Baotou shantytowns of Inner Mongolia. But according to these petitioners, it's best to beware of Chinese leaders bearing gifts. That's because before Li visited their village last December, Enshi authorities detained scores of villagers to stop them from telling the incoming premier about the misdeeds of local authorities.
Both Li Keqiang and Xi Jinping have expressed their support of petitioning, but it's just empty talk if there's no institutional protection. The suppression of petitioners in many areas continues due to institutional problems. Petitioners do not have appropriate channels to express their requests.
And for these petitioners, things didn't get any better when they got to Beijing.
Many policemen kept bothering me and would not let me leave. They detained me here. I said I saw on TV and read in the newspaper that Beijing is very good. When I arrived, the reality I was facing was a lack of human rights, a lack of freedom, and a lack of dignity.
State-run media recently announced that authorities would do more to protect the rights of petitioners, but the realities seem much more stark. During recent provincial meetings of Communist Party officials, petitioners from around the country have reported being beaten and detained when they tried to protest.
China's one-child policy. It restricts most couples to just one child. In some cases, they can have two. But any more than that, the family will have to either abort the baby or pay a fine. The enforcement of this controversial policy has led to the death of a boy in eastern China.
A baby boy was run over and killed after a confrontation between his parents and family planning officials in eastern China. The incident has highlighted again the human cost of China's one-child policy. The officials from Mayu town in Zhejiang province were demanding the boy's parents pay a $4,800 fine because he was the third child in the family. In China, only one child is permitted for families living in the city and 2 in rural areas. The father dropped his 13-month-old son as he struggled with officials. A government van then ran over the baby. He died in hospital on Tuesday. This sparked a large protest. Footage posted online showed locals surrounding the government building. Riot police was dispatched.
There are still a lot of people at the government. There were even more on Tuesday.
NTD contacted the local police for information. We were asked to contact the propaganda authorities, but the calls there went unanswered. On Tuesday, state media reported 2 people have been detained on criminal charges. China's controversial one-child policy has come under scrutiny for its brutal enforcement. Last July, a photo was posted on the internet of a woman forced to abort her 7-month pregnancy. The fetus was then placed next to the woman as she lay in her hospital bed.
As Chinese leader Xi Jinping came into power last fall, he made tackling corruption a priority. Now, a citizen reporter who is exposing corruption is the litmus test for his promise. Famous for exposing sex scandals involving communist officials, Zhu Ruifeng is facing retaliation.
Zhu Ruifeng flew to almost pop star status last year after leaking a sex tape that eventually toppled 11 officials in Chongqing. He plans to release another 6 tapes that would incriminate more Chinese authorities. Chongqing police have threatened and interrogated him. Now, Zhu tells NTD they're slandering him to try to get him to stop.
In the past 60 days of investigation, the Chongqing police failed to find fault with me. Later, they came to Beijing to intimidate me, which drew a lot of attention from the media and netizens. As a result, they had to withdraw. Then they wrote this article tarring me and hired people to spread it on the internet.
Zhu is referring to this anonymous article. It appeared on Chinese internet at the beginning of this month. It's titled "True Face of Anti-Corruption Fighter Zhu Ruifeng." It claims to give details of Zhu's personal life and finances, which he says are misconstrued. The article accuses Zhu of accepting hush money from Zhengzhou Technical Supervision Department. Zhu says the accusation was based on an article published in the Private Economy Daily in 2008. A Beijing court ruled last year the article was fabricated and ordered the paper to pay Zhu compensation for libel.
If my goal is to get rich, I can do it just doing some business with my wisdom and connections. I don't need to risk being kidnapped or assassinated by corrupt officials or investigation by the National Security Police.
Zhu's anti-corruption efforts began in 2006. He set up his website, jdwsy.com, to collect and release information on corrupt officials. He has exposed more than 100 of them so far. With his watchdog activities, Zhu says the latest tactics by Chongqing police are nothing new, but they have impacted his life. He says an official has threatened to go after his wife. According to the New York Times, he recently had to file for a divorce to protect her safety.
It's meant to be a political meeting to set policy directions for China, but the lineup of a top legal advisory body to the Chinese regime looks to be a gathering of the rich and famous. The membership of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference was announced on Saturday. Amongst them is Robin Li, the chairman of China's largest search engine, Baidu. Li is also China's 3rd richest man. His company gained market share in China after Google Inc. withdrew in 2010, following pressure from the Chinese regime to censor online content. Chinese author Mo Yan will also be attending. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate has been criticized before for lacking intellectual independence by aligning with the communist regime. Basketball star Yao Ming and Olympic medalist Liu Xiang will also be rubbing shoulders with other top communist leaders. The CPPCC's National Committee will meet on March 3rd. The annual gathering of the rubber stamp parliament, the National People's Congress, will also happen in March. The 2 meetings are collectively known as the 2 sessions. They will finalize the handover of key government positions. The transition of the Communist Party leadership took place last November. And coming up after the break, Capital and illegal funds leaving China. Fake mutton, China's latest food safety scandal. And Shen Yun begins its tour of New Zealand. And welcome back. China has been attracting a lot of investment over the last decade, but in 2012, the Chinese regime saw overall loss of capital. This is coupled with news that more and more illegal money is leaving the country. Is this a temporary trend or does it reflect a deeper problem?
More than $117 billion in capital left China in 2012, according to figures released by the country's foreign exchange regulator. This follows earlier data showing large sums of illicit money has been moving out of China. The State Administration of Foreign Exchange released the figure on February 1st. The massive deficit in the country's capital and financial account was a dramatic turnaround from a $220 billion surplus the year before. In January, the Communist Party's Internal Discipline Committee reported more than $100 million in illicit funds left the country last year, according to the Economic Observer. Professor Frank Tianxie believes this is a reflection of a loss in confidence of China's political and economic stability. The outflow of funds can also lead to another problem for the economy.
The funds could be reinvested in China, pretending to be foreign investment. This takes advantage of the taxes and property concessions and deals another blow to the Chinese economy. The profit made through the investment is then moved out of China, causing another loss of wealth.
Observers have said that the capital outflow in 2012 was prompted by fears over a hard landing in China's economy, but Professor Xie says the trend will continue.
Funds will continue to leave China and the pace will increase. Corrupt officials fear a collapse of the party and will protect their wealth by moving it overseas.
Chinese media have reported a spike in officials selling off real estate assets amidst calls to clamp down on corruption. The Economic Observer reported in January that the Communist Party's Central Commission for Discipline Inspection predicts $150 million in illicit money will leave China this year.
China's widening income gap between the rich and poor has long been a problem. It's been a key factor behind rising social instability. The Chinese regime on Tuesday announced plans to reduce income inequalities. Measures include raising the minimum wage, increasing interest rates for savings accounts, and asking state-owned companies to give more back to the government. China's booming economy has not benefited everyone. More than 13% of the population lives under the poverty line. That's on an annual income of around $360. China's poverty line threshold is also lower than that set by the World Bank. Under Tuesday's proposed plan, minimum wage would rise to 40% of urban salaries by 2015. This, along with the other measures, would hurt the profit of businesses and banks, something that may be met with resistance. The measures are also largely aimed at raising income. This can encourage household spending, but it does not address the actual issue of wealth distribution. Chinese regulators have been trying to boost domestic consumption to counteract slowing export demands. China has seen its fair share of food safety scandals, from plastic-laced milk to fake eggs. Now the humble duck meat has been found laced with chemicals and being sold as another, much more expensive meat.
China state media reported that a gang has been arrested in the last few days for allegedly processing duck meat with highly toxic additives and then selling it to restaurants as mutton. 34 people were arrested along with a large store of tainted meat and chemicals. China Daily reported that when police searched the factory in Liaoning province in northeastern China, duck meat was found soaked in a stew of chemicals and mutton fat, along with other additives. The meat contained more than 2,000 times the legal limit of sodium nitrate. Mutton is generally much pricier than duck in China. The fake mutton was sold at less than half the market price to small and medium-sized restaurants, which are stocking up for Chinese New Year. Chinese state radio said the suspects in the case sold more than a ton of the tainted meat to restaurants and distributors. The seizure of the tainted duck meat is yet another black mark on China's beleaguered food industry.
Thanks to The Lord of the Rings, many people now associate New Zealand with the fictional Middle Earth, while New York-based Shen Yun Performing Arts is in New Zealand, and they're presenting a culture from the very real Middle Kingdom, more commonly known as China.
Shen Yun Performing Arts opened in St. James Theatre in Wellington, New Zealand on February 5th, and the former dancer was captivated by the performance.
phenomenal, absolutely breathtaking, colourful. They excreted such elegance, tenacity. The men were absolutely, they were strong, the strength just shone through, the storytelling, just beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Susan's background in dance gave her a special appreciation for Shen Yun.
Something that everyone must see in order to actually find and feel. If you're a dancer, you'd actually be able to feel the beauty, the warmth, and also the timing, the execution. It was choreographed beautifully, and for the scenery at the back, for the scenery of the dancers to come through into reality, it just flowed.
She loved the positive messages in the show.
Those that are not in China would be missing a great deal. The message that they were trying to portray that came across to me was tolerance, love, divinity. The message needs to be spread, and even though Shen Yun, is that right, has only been going for 7 years, I hope that it goes for another 7 years and much stronger and into the future.
Shen Yun Performing Arts leaves Wellington on February 6th for Auckland.
And that's all for this broadcast of NTD China News. For more on China-related topics, visit our website at ntd.tv or subscribe to our YouTube channel, NTD on China. Coming up next is a segment of the 9 commentaries of the Communist Party. Stay tuned.